Steeler Nation, welcome to the 24-hour after extravaganza known as the Steeler Hangover. My name is Bryan Anthony Davis. Tony Defeo is with me once again, and we are here to rehash the happenings of Steelers 23, Baltimore Ravens 26. And, oh, gosh, it was a rough one, my friend. It was a rough one. Once again, the Steeler Hangover is brought to you by BehindTheSteelCurtain.com for all your Pittsburgh Steeler needs. And really, at this point, at 1-4 in the season, I think we need BehindTheSteelCurtain.com for Steeler healing. And I think together with all of our commenters that come up and talk and send us messages, we can all heal together, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Tony, 24 hours after, how are you feeling, my man?
These hangovers are getting worse. I thought I was at this age more tolerant to hangovers, but I guess I'm not. I mean, yesterday was it was, as I've said a few times, it was one of the more exciting and enjoyable games I've actually witnessed in a while. I really had a great time watching it, and that's what made the ending so hard to take. It was just another in a long line of frustrating losses and an inability to come up big in big moments.
Well, I'm glad we have our support group here, and we do. And so far, we've got, just like that, we have 28 supporters. We'll see over 100 in probably the next 10 minutes. That's a great thing. And I'm already reading on the comment section, this one still hurts. Tough loss, trying to accept it. And yeah, that's what we're trying to do. But we do have that question too. I mean, the fact the title of the show is it a lost season? And where do we go from here, Tony?
Well, I mean, they clearly have, regardless of the loss of Roethlisberger, they have enough talent, or they've displayed the ability to hang in, not just hang into games, but to have the lead late. So where do they go from here is they have to find somebody on that team has to step up and put his foot down in these key moments and make plays and snatch victory from the jaws of defeat instead of the other way around, which is what's been happening since last year. So moving forward, they have to be more disciplined in those key moments.
Yes, they definitely do. And so we have a lot to talk about. We're going to rehash the game. We are going to go ahead and wait till towards the end of the show to take your questions. But I am actually going to bring up a question right now because it's very important just to bring this one up, because this is a key concern of all of Steeler Nation. And it's from Felicia. She's asking, how was Mason? How are we doing? And God bless Mason and keep the nation. And that's how we're all feeling. That is paramount right now. We've been through, Tony and I, we've been through December 4th, 2017 together. We were doing the Hangover right after the show. Actually, it wasn't called the Hangover back then. I think it was called just Steeler Post Game. I think that's what we called it. And we went on right after the game, and that was a late night. When Ryan Shazier went down. And let me ask you this. What were your thoughts when you saw Mason Rudolph laying motionless on the Heinz Field turf for what seemed like 5, 6, 7 minutes, a long time? What was going through your head, and were you feeling like it was deja vu with Shazier?
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's exactly what came through my mind when I saw him laying on the field like that. My thoughts rushed back to that night in Cincinnati 2 years ago, and I was relieved to see him sitting up, but I was also just astounded that they allowed him to walk off the field, because at that point it was hard to say what was wrong with him, but it just brought back some bad memories for Shazier, and I'm sure it brought back memories for his teammates too, because they've had to live through that too with their teammates. So it had to be doubly bad for them.
You know what I mean? It's one of the things for me that when you go ahead and you work with somebody and these are 53 men playing together, and then you throw in the coaches, and you throw in the fact that they've had a tragedy this year with Daryl Drake passing away in training camp. And when you have all these guys, eating together, being on a plane together, practicing together, sweating, blood, sweat, and tears, and you see one of you go down, it has got to be absolutely devastating because not only you've seen somebody that you've rallied with, and you also think of, wow, that could be you too. So with that being said, it really hurts. I will never forget watching Vince Williams on the sideline because he was so close. I mean, they were shake and bake together, Shazier and Williams, and he was in tears. This big bad dude is a human being, and we talked about this a while ago. We look at these guys as players, and you always want to look at them as human beings, and I think that's what we're trying to do together. Juju was devastated as well because I mean, this is his quarterback. Mason Rudolph very early is becoming not just the quarterback, but he's becoming a leader of this team, and they knew it. David Castro said it right when he came in, right after the Seattle game. Is like, nobody wants it more than this guy, and we trust this guy. And no one's going to work harder than this guy. So it was really nice to see him get up, but to see the concern, see the tears, see Steeler Nation come together and pray that it wasn't going to happen again. And it did not. He did get up. He looked woozy. Now, the only news that I have is I listened to a lot of Steeler radio, and Tunch Ilkin was on with Stan Savran today. And he reported, he was like, yeah, this was about 12:30. And so I saw him in the cafeteria this morning. And I'm like, my head, I was like, what? And so he was like, yeah, I went over and I was talking to him, asked him how he was feeling. He said, actually, I don't feel that bad. They said, well, did they wake you up every 2 hours, Mason? Because of the concussion. He's like, no, they told me I didn't have to do that. They told me it wasn't that bad. So all I know is what all of us saw when he was walking off the field. He looked like everything you see of a guy getting his bell rung. It actually, and I'm not trying to make this funny, but it reminded me of the episode of MASH years ago when Trapper John was boxing this giant guy, and he was just so out of it, and they were like carrying him off the field, which was ridiculous that they had to carry him off the field and help him off the field. I know he said he wanted to get up, but whether that was the NFL saying that cart was user error, I just don't know what was happening. But when you have people having to go ahead and have to push a cart, that's a problem. But luckily he's okay. Look, I hope he gets better. I don't care who plays quarterback next week for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If it's Devlin Hodges, if it's Mason Rudolph, as long as there's a healthy guy in there, that's all I care about. And I wish Mason Rudolph the best. And it looks like he is going to go ahead and recover from that. And it's not going to be as devastating as it first looked, because I had a friend of mine that looked at it and said, I was afraid he wasn't going to be breathing. Right. I mean, it just looked really bad. Thanks for a message that I just got from Vodka Drinker. It says, it's Hodges, dude. Yes, I know. We all know who's going to play this week. But thanks for the news flash there, as I'm being facetious. But, we're really, we're pretty sure that Hodges is going to go ahead and play. Then there's a bye week, and then he could come back for the Miami game. That would probably be the best case scenario as far as that goes. But as far as the season goes, the season pales in comparison to a man's health, and we're hoping that he's better. But as far as salvaging the season, if you're looking forward to a guy like Devlin Hodges, what's your confidence in this guy after that performance yesterday?
It's much better now. I think I think the most important thing is he seems to have a great deal of confidence in himself. If you looked at him on the sideline, fine, he's playing with, as they say, house money. Nobody's expecting much from him. He's a third string quarterback essentially, but he looked confident. He looked accurate. And when he was in the game, he completed 7 of 9 passes. He threw the ball down the field with accuracy over the middle. I'm confident that he could keep them in the game at least next week against LA. So my confidence in him is pretty good after yesterday. So I'm feeling pretty good about how he played.
Yeah, you know what? I thought he showed complete moxie out there. He was very poised. I really liked what I saw out there. Dave Schofield mentioned to me earlier that don't be surprised if he is cleared to play. I mean, I kind of don't know what's going to happen because the concussion protocol, it's a serious deal and it needs to be. We saw, remember AB going off of the field after the Burfict hit, and that was just, he was out too. Wasn't out as long, but he looked like a rag doll. And I remember him saying that if they would have advanced, he didn't know if he would have made the AFC Championship game.
Right.
If they would have advanced in that game. So with that being said, you never know what's going to happen, but whoever the quarterback is, I'm behind him, and I really like what I see of this football team right now. It's a loss, and the loss was devastating, but the question here is this a lost season now? Or is there any possible way that they could salvage this? And do we want to be the guys that, I know I've been accused of being the guy that blows sunshine and rainbows up everybody's posterior by being the guy that's overly optimistic. But I want to think that there's still some kind of weird possibility that they could go ahead and make it.
Well, it's right there in these last 3 games, or last 3.5 games. If the second half of the Seattle game, they've clearly not given up as a team, and they've clearly found ways to put themselves in position to win these games. So, unlike some other teams in the NFL, like the Dolphins and the Jets, they don't look totally helpless out there. They look like a team that just needs to finish games. So the season still can't be salvaged. I guess it all depends on what you mean by that. Do you mean playoffs? You mean 8-8? I guess we'll have to wait and see. But yesterday would have been a great game for them to win as far as the playoffs are concerned. But I guess we'll have to try to steal another game from a team that you don't expect them to beat. But if you look at the second half of their schedule, it lightens up considerably. They have the Dolphins, the Jets, the Bengals again. So there's and the Cardinals. So there's definitely an opportunity for them to have a season that's much better than we think it's going to be right now at 1-4. They just have to, again, find a way to come through in crucial moments, which they haven't been able to do for quite a while.
You know what? I agree with you on that, and hopefully that team that they don't expect to beat would be the Los Angeles Chargers, who are actually struggling right now as well. They lost to Denver yesterday and lost in decisive fashion as well. So with that being said, let's continue to talk about yesterday's game. We talked about the rough part with the injury. Let's talk about the good and the bad. Let's start with the good. If we had to go ahead and put the cap on somebody as valedictorian for this game and say they would have went and won this football game, who would have been the guy that we would have been talking about as the MVP? Who would you put that on? Who's your valedictorian of yesterday's game?
Actually, it's probably going to come out of left field, but I really liked how Vince Williams played yesterday. I don't know about you, but I really I thought he was a big difference for that defense. 9 tackles, he had a sack, he had a pass defense. He looked really, really good, and he looked like he was a great fit alongside Devin Bush. So, had they won, I think he would have been somebody we would have been talking about more today. But obviously, you can say, we don't know how the game, if they would have won, maybe it's Devlin Hodges throwing a touchdown pass, then that all bets are off. But But I think I really liked how Vince Williams played.
You know what? In my grades article, I had put Vince Williams as the valedictorian. Another guy that I'll throw a shout out to would be Minkah Fitzpatrick, just because of how he is solidifying that defense. And I know it seems like I have been really pushing him on everybody after the trade. I just love what he's doing. He has made Terrell Edmonds a much better player, and he's kind of solidified that defense. And by the end of the season, if things keep going in the direction that the defense is playing, this is a top 10, top 5 defense. We do have to go ahead and capitalize on some of the turnovers that they're getting, but he is definitely a reason. And one guy that we really can't deny is TJ Watt.
Oh yeah.
Watt is really becoming the heart of that defense. And, you could actually say that about a few guys. When have we been in a position where we could reel off about 4 or 5 names being the guys on that defense that are really going to lead them into the future? I could still throw out Hayward and Tuitt. I could throw out Bush. I could throw out Watt, Hayden, and Fitzpatrick at this point. And other guys, we saw Sutton step up. We saw Hilton step up. Hilton, my gosh, Hilton is one of those guys that is really playing well. So that's I asked the question when, and my buddy Dennis Sheridan wrote many, many years ago, Bryan, and that's the last time we could say that. I mean, it's been a long time. So I really love it. I really love what they're doing. This is one loss that, as devastating as a loss that it was to me, I feel really good about the team going forward. I still think some tweaks need to be made. Now we got to go on the rough side of the ball. If we got to send somebody to detention, Tony, who are you sending to detention?
Well, I mean, I hate to say it, but it has to be Juju, because I've been harping on this for all day. It's just it wears on you as a fan and a writer when you see these guys in close game after close game, and somebody, whether it's an offensive player or a defensive player or a coach, somebody makes a critical mistake at the wrong time, and you saw that yesterday. I mean, if he holds on to that ball there, and I realize Marlon Humphrey made a great play, but gosh darn it, Juju's a Pro Bowl player in his own right. So, I mean, eventually you have to stop tipping your cap to the other team and have them tip their cap to you. And if he catches that ball there, they're at midfield and overtime, and who knows what happens. So it's got to be Juju.
Well, you know what, I saw a very interesting tweet about Juju yesterday, and the tweet was showing players, great Steeler receivers through their first 3 years and how many lost fumbles they had. And he was at the bottom of the list with 2. And Lynn Swann, Antonio Brown, Hines Ward, they lost more fumbles. But the problem is that Juju Smith-Schuster is doing it at the worst time possible. I mean, his timing can't be worse. It was right at the end of the New Orleans Saints game, which cost them the playoffs, and now it's right at the end of a game against the Baltimore Ravens. So sorry, I'm having some mic problems. But I've got to ask the question: was that a great defensive play, though, Tony?
Oh, it was a great defensive play. It was. I mean, he hit the ball square. He hit the ball square. You see those guys trying to do that all the time, and he just happened to hit it square at the right moment. And if that was the sole, mistake at a crucial moment over the last 11 games, it wouldn't. You could forgive not just him but the team. But when it keeps happening time and time again, it's hard to it's hard to credit the other team. It's hard enough for fans to credit the other team as it is, but when it keeps happening and over again, you just have to say, look, somebody has to come through and quit making these kind of mistakes. James Conner 2 weeks ago. So when it's a repeated thing, it's hard to give the other team credit.
Okay, I mean, I can see that. Now, look, this is something I've been trying to avoid. We've been seeing it on the live chat. I am just going to come out and say this is just my opinion here. But before I do that, I'm going to ask you, how was your weekend, Tony, before the Steeler game? Did you go out at all this weekend? Did you have any fun?
It was okay. I pretty much kept to myself and did my daily chores, did some writing, nothing too exciting.
But do you ever have a time when you go out and trip the light fantastic, do something fun?
Oh yeah, probably more times than I should.
But does it affect your work? Like say you go out, and then 2 days later you make a mistake at work. Is it going to be due to going out?
No, well, I mean, as we've talked about in the past, and this is slightly different, but I fell on my face 2 weeks ago and knocked myself out, and the next day I was writing articles. So I don't think that, I know where people are going with this. He was out partying at IUP over the weekend, and that's why he fumbled. And quite frankly, people, that has nothing to do with anything. That's not why he fumbled the ball. It's just another reason to come up with, other than the fact that he made a mistake and the other guy, yes, made a great play. But it has nothing to do with Juju partying. I'm sorry, but it didn't. So let's stop it. I know we're not going to stop it, but let's stop it.
Yeah, I was just going to go ahead and bring that up. Look, I mean, they have a right to go out and have fun and do stuff. I don't think that had anything to do with it, because on this play that he scored a touchdown, and it was a beautiful touchdown, Marlon Humphreys went for the ball in the same exact way. In fact, I noticed that he had switched hands on it too, so he might have been thinking about it. But with that being said, you just don't know. Now,
he had the ball. He had the ball away from the defender. He had it in the right arm. He just coughed it up. But it's not because he was partying, or because he didn't have lacked focus. That's not what that was all about. He just made a mistake.
Well, I mean, look, I get that, and we do some we do have a lot of people that are disagreeing with us, and hey, I respect that, to go ahead and disagree with it. But I know of a lot of players like in the 70s that, gosh, you should have seen some of the things those guys, Steeler players, some of the things those guys did on their nights out. I don't think I don't know. I just don't think that's something that is taking away from what he does, because he made a spectacular play as well. I mean, we are looking for something. We are looking for something to blame the loss on, and right now Juju's the scapegoat. And guess what? And I agree with you, Tony. He does deserve to go to detention here, and that's what we're going to say. But I do contend that a man has a right to go out and as long as he's doing it safely and not jeopardizing any other human being, that's fine. He did that play, blew the game, but is that the only play that blew the game? What was the most egregious call or egregious mistake in this game that really turned it around?
Well, I think there's two of them, but if you're going to go just for timing, I think the call against Ola Adeni was just, I mean, I'm just going to say it was stupid. I mean, it was, and the referee standing right there. A trained referee should be able to know the difference between a hit to the knees and a hit to the torso, essentially, or the thigh that slid down to the knees as he was making the tackle. And to me, it's just, I almost think it was a makeup call for them initially missing the helmet hit against Mason Rudolph. That's my personal opinion on that one. But that was just a silly call at a critical time.
You know what? That's true. That's what I was looking for. I'll bring up another one though. Um, and we talked about this all week long when we talked about the success of the Wildcat against Cincinnati, but where you cannot go ahead and dust off the same game plan that you had against Cincinnati, because guess what? A guy like Bill Belichick, definitely a guy like John Harbaugh, they're scouting your team. Okay, they are scouting you, and they know that what you ran last week, especially on Monday Night Football. I mean, not only do they get tape, but it's very easy to watch that Monday Night Football game when you're playing them 6 days later. So everybody saw it.
Right.
So what do? They come out. The first thing they do is they run that sweep that it hardly worked. Then they go to the Wildcat and throw that terrible interception. They sniffed that out. And this is not the best. This is not the best defense. This is not the Ravens defense that we saw before. They're very susceptible. You could go ahead. You could have beaten these guys with just innovation. And I have a problem with Randy Fichtner. And my problem is Randy Fichtner I feel like his play calling is lazy. I mean, Dallas Quinley just wrote this, and I thought this was really interesting. Mason holds 54 school records. Why is Samuels throwing the ball? Great question. I mean, and that was a terribly thrown pass. James Washington was not ready. I mean, I cannot blame James Washington for that at all. He wasn't ready for it. So, I don't normally call for anybody's head. I don't want to see anybody lose a job, but I am not. I'm thinking that was just horrendous. I thought the game plan just died right there, and I was done. In fact, I heard on the radio somebody made a mention that, at that point, why didn't they just go fire him on the spot? I'm like, no, you're not going to do that. But it just, I mean, it's been said that they don't trust him. Why can't you trust this guy? We've seen his body of work. So I don't know why. And he got a whole lot more popular when he was out of the game too. But then you saw what Hodges started to do, and you're like, wow, we've got another good quarterback there too. This is very interesting here. The two bad calls against us at the end of the game were makeup calls for the two against the Ratbirds earlier. Well, gosh, I understand the makeup call thing, but at that time and place, that's just a really bad makeup call. I'd be fine if I would have been fine if the Bush interception would have went the other way. I would have been okay with that. I just don't really think that you can really do a makeup call there.
And it wasn't that egregious of a. I mean, people talk about the Devin Bush. They act like it was a foregone, like it was they talk in absolutes about it being an incomplete pass, and it was kind of inconclusive. They called it an interception on the field, and there really wasn't a ton there to overturn that call. So it wasn't an egregious error by the officials like the Ola Adeni call was.
That was it. And you made a point that how could they not know that wasn't that was how could they miscall that play? But they huge mistake too. In overtime before the game, they announced to Hayward and everybody that Hayward was trying to get clarification. They announced at that time that both teams will have an opportunity to have the ball in overtime, which is wrong. That's not the rule. If that team goes ahead, if the Ravens go ahead and score a touchdown, it's over. We saw that 2011 a la Tim Tebow. And so, that was the big risk on that play. We're not going to go too far into the riskiness of it. It did work. If it didn't, everybody would be calling for Mike Tomlin's head.
Right.
That's when you make a risky call like that. I saw where he defended it vociferously after the game with how bad the Steelers' return game has been, and that to me is an indictment of it's a major indictment of Danny Smith Jr., but it's a major indictment of Danny Smith Jr. and his play. But the thing to me is it's also an indictment of the entire organization for getting rid of a guy like Deontay Spencer, who's now in Denver,
right,
and who would be able to give them a return game, because Holton's not doing it. Switzer's definitely not doing it. I'm just wondering what the thinking is there. And I know I know it's really easy to go ahead and second guess them because they're in the building. I'm not. But I just thought that was something that was a huge mistake when they did the cutdowns, and trying to stash a guy that looked pretty good in the preseason on the practice squad. Of course, he's going to get poached. Deontay Spencer could have made a huge difference to this team because of the return game, because he is a star. He is a starter at that point because you're starting on special teams.
Right.
But that's all we can say there. So we've rehashed the game completely. We rehashed the hit on Mason. We rehashed the terrible interception. We talked about how well Hodges did. The only thing we talked about how well the defense did. The only thing that I'm wondering is, what are we thinking about the offensive line? Have they improved? And what are we thinking about the running game? Here's a very interesting stat that Dave Schofield brought up. And what he brought up at the yesterday after the game to me was the fact that the Steelers had 4.1 yards per carry on offense. The Ravens had 3.7 yards per carry. And there was a stat too. I'm not sure where I heard this, but the Ravens were 11 games in a row with 150 plus rushing yards, and the Steelers kept them under that, which is, to me, fantastic. They found a way to neutralize a guy like Jackson for the most part. Any NFL team is going to move on you. But they were. But as the game wore on, you felt like they had solved him. And that's really spoke to me. I thought that defensive performance was fantastic. So that's something that you could hang your hat on going forward. What needs to be fixed to salvage this season?
I think they need we seem to keep harping on it, but they're not, other than when they run the Wildcat, they're not. They don't seem to care about it. It's a running game. They have to make a commitment to the running game, and they had 19 carries yesterday. You have your second year quarterback. He gets knocked out. You have your rookie third string quarterback in the game, and you still don't make a commitment to the run in a close game. So if you're not going to make a commitment to the run in that situation, playing at home, when are you going to do it? So if they have to fix anything, they have to just make a commitment to running the football. And 19 times a game just is not going to cut it. You have to make and trust me, you don't think James Conner wants to run the ball more, and Jalen Samuels, and you don't think those offensive linemen want to run block and be aggressive? Of course they do. So why they continue to ignore that part of the game is beyond me. Is it just because Rosie Nix is hurt? I think I hesitate to think that's not the reason, but maybe it is.
So Dennis says run game, rinse and repeat. Yeah, the run game really needs to have some focus on it. So I agree with you, Tony. Now I'm going to bring this one up. Vernon Woody, offensive coordinator. Now, something very interesting happened this morning, and we could actually spend some time on that as well. But an offensive coordinator, a pretty darn good offensive coordinator, just became available, and his name is Jay Gruden, who to me is a fantastic offensive coordinator. Would they ever? Is this one of those crazy, fan theories and just pipe dreams, or is this a thing that could you see them making a move and bringing in a guy like Gruden? Would that even be possible?
Well, I never thought it'd be possible that they'd go out and trade their first round pick for a safety, and they did that. I didn't think it'd be possible that they'd sign Joe Hayden, even though he fell in their laps. They still made the move to sign him, and they did that. So I think they've shown some different traits in the last few years. So I mean, what do they have to lose at this point? Ben's not around, at least not this year. Even though him and Fichtner are apparently friends, it might be a good year to say, look, we're gonna try something new. We have a couple young quarterbacks. We're gonna try something new and see how it goes. So I wouldn't put it past him at this point. It doesn't seem likely. It's not the Steeler way, but I've been surprised a few times now. So why not?
Okay, I'm going to ask everybody in the live chat, and we're going to open up for questions too. So go ahead, throw in your questions. But let's do either or. We do either or all the time in the off season on the Steeler preview. So we're going to do an either or right here. Offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Who would you rather see? Would you rather see Randy Fichtner, or would you rather see Todd Haley?
You asking me or the chat?
Well, I'm asking you and the chat.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Haley certainly had his faults, and he didn't get along with the quarterback. So I don't know if they want to bring him back. One thing I'll say about Fichtner last year is he was good in the red zone, but he hasn't even been good in that area this year. So that's a tough one. I don't know if I'd take either one right now, to be honest with you.
You know what? I'm laughing because I mean it's blowing up. I mean it's it's half and half.
Right.
But it's.
Remember what you all said 2 years ago. Anybody but Haley. So let's remember. Let's remember how it was 2 years ago, people.
Yeah, I mean, and I wouldn't expect the Gruden thing to happen now, but and Cree mentioned that they wouldn't do something like that in midseason, but the Steeler way is changing. And let me tell you about a team back in 2012. I believe it was 2012 or 2013. I'm going to say 2012. It was a team that went ahead and fired their offensive coordinator. If I'm not mistaken, was it Mark Trestman, or it was the guy at Miami, Cam's, I can't remember his name, but
I know who you mean.
They brought in Jim Caldwell, and it
Right.
was the Baltimore Ravens, and they won the Super Bowl by, I think they did that like week 10.
Yeah, it was very late.
So, and they actually won the Super Bowl, so they weren't afraid to do that. Gosh, what was the name of that guy? He was actually the head coach of Miami for a cup of coffee or so. But they brought in Jim Caldwell, and they did very well. If I'm not mistaken. So so you're saying right now, to go back and answer the question of earlier, Cam Cameron, thank you. Mateus Cecilia brought that up. I could not remember his name, and that's not a hard one. I mean, his name is twice. It's so Cam Cameron. Yeah, that's and he was supposed to be an offensive genius. It just wasn't working for the Ravens, and they made that change. Very interesting. So you never know what's going to happen in the middle of a season. I mean, what they're going to do. So to salvage 2019, and now salvaging could mean a few different things. It doesn't have to mean making the playoffs. It could mean having a respectable 8-8. And remember, you're not in a situation where you're playing for a draft pick at this point. Maybe you're playing for a high second round draft pick, but you don't have to tank. You just need to get better. So with that, what's going to make this team better? And it sounds like your answer was the scheme or the offensive coordinator.
Well, yeah. I mean, they have to. Every game it seems like the other team has 73 plays and they have 51 plays, and they're tied for the league lead in turnovers, and they still can't stay on the field. I mean, you have to find a way to to make this offense more efficient. I mean, if you want to, your defense is this close to being a very good defense after so many years of it struggling, and now when it's about to become something special, it seems now the offense is struggling. And I realize you don't have your quarterback in there, but you do have a lot of other decent parts on that offense. You have a really good offensive line. You have a top flight receiver, and you have a running back that was in the Pro Bowl last year. So, and you have a couple good tight ends now. So, let's be more imaginative and with this offense. And it doesn't have to be wildcat. It doesn't have to be some kind of, it worked last week, but it doesn't have to be every week. As we talked about last week, you have to continue to evolve this offense and center it around the guys that you have. And right now you don't have Ben. So let's act like you know that you don't have Ben and you have a couple young quarterbacks and tailor the offense that way.
Knapp 1963. I love this. Salvage equals make the pick traded away 11 or higher.
Well, that's for PR purposes.
Yeah, that's great. So with that, we're going to open any more questions on the live chat. But while we're waiting for some questions, we're going to play a game called Buy and Sell. So I'm just going to throw out some Steelers, and I want you to say whether we're buying or selling this guy. I'm going to go out with an easy one first. Chris Boswell.
Buy.
Jordan Berry.
Buy.
Ryan Switzer.
Sell.
Johnny Holton.
Sell.
Mason Rudolph.
Oh, I'll buy that every day.
Devlin Hodges.
Buy.
James Conner.
I'm going to go with buy for now.
Really? Okay. Let's go with Alejandro Villanueva.
Buy.
Matt Filer.
I'm going to go with sell.
Javon Hargrave.
Buy.
Okay. I'm forgetting. I am forgetting our tight ends and our receivers. So let me throw a few of them out. I'm not even gonna. Let's just do it for fun. Dante Moncrief. Bye.
Sell.
Hey, real quick. I'm just gonna say this on Dante Moncrief. We're talking about, hey, you got to get rid of him for the 3rd round pick.
Not anymore.
James Washington, that shoulder injury. We've talked too much about Mason Rudolph. We don't know how bad that shoulder injury is. You might be seeing a lot more of Dante Moncrief. Nick Vannett and Vance McDonald.
Oh, you have to buy. There's nobody else.
Okay. Mark Barron.
Sell.
Bud Dupree.
I'm going to go with buy.
You know what? That's one that I'm saying right now. Yeah. Yeah. Somebody in the live chat just wrote Moncrief giveaway. So they're not buying, they're not selling. He's just on.
That's pretty good.
He's on the side of the road with the free sign.
Free.
And if you ever notice, somebody said this to me once, if you put something on the side of the road in front of your house that says free, it's not likely to go. But if you go ahead and put a sign that says $10 on it, it's going to be stolen.
I can see that. Yeah.
Cam Sutton.
Oh, buy. He made a great play yesterday. Buy.
And Mike Hilton.
Buy.
Boy, yeah, he's playing. He's playing right now he's playing for his football life in Pittsburgh. Terrell Edmonds. That's a toughie.
Yeah, because I mean he really hasn't. He looks solid now, but he doesn't really do anything extraordinary. But I'll still go with buy.
But is Minka making him better?
I think he is. I think he's making a lot of people better.
Joe Hayden.
Buy.
Steven Nelson.
Buy. He's don't even notice him.
Okay. And one last guy, Cam Hayward.
Oh, buy.
Okay, so I left guys out like Pouncey, and I left guys out like Tuitt and Watt and Bush. We know we're buying those guys, but there weren't that many sells on there. That's the thing. that's the point I'm trying to make where this team is. So let's take it a little further. And now this is where it gets a little crazy. Terrell Austin.
Buy.
Keith Butler.
Sell.
Randy Feetner.
Sell.
Danny Smith Jr.
Giveaway.
Discount rack. And yep, I'm going to do it. William Coonrad's asking me to do it. Mike Tomlin.
Buy.
You want to buy Mike Tomlin right now?
I think you need. I still think he's can keep this team together. I think he's shown the ability in the past. So
now let me ask you this: it has come out today that Moneybags Dan Snyder, after firing Jay Gruden, has on his wish list, and probably number one on his wish list, Mike Tomlin, along with Eric Bieniemy, and I believe there was somebody else on that list as well, that it's escaping me this moment. But let's not talk about buying and selling. Would you trade Mike Tomlin for a number one pick? And, it's been done before. Bill Belichick came with compensation, and I believe it was a number one pick that the New York Jets got out of that entire debacle way back in 2000. So, if you had that opportunity, and forget about your allegiance to him, and maybe this is a January question, but if they came right now and said, you get your number one pick back, which could very well be a top 3 pick with the way the Redskins are playing, and Pence Woods Anon says Chuck Tanner was actually traded too, which very interested. Interesting. Back in the 70s, John Gruden was traded. The Raiders actually ended up trading him to the Buccaneers. So if you're going to go ahead and look at that, which I don't think that's going to happen, but would you go ahead and make that trade now or in January?
Well, hypothetically speaking, it would be pretty tempting to part ways with the coach for a top 3 pick, because how often do they get to pick that high? But at the same time, it's like we've said before, it's like the quarterback position. You better be sure if you're going to make a change at the top like that, because the coach is like the quarterback. If you don't have the right guy, you're going to struggle for years until you do find the right guy. But it definitely would be something. I think at this point it'd be at 60-40 in favor, and only because of the compensation, 60-40 in favor of making that trade.
Yeah, so I'm going to show you this. In the green TV, this is Pittsburgh. We don't fire head coaches. Yeah, but this is not actually a fire. This is a trade. And look, I'm not ready to. I'm ready to fire the offensive coordinator. That's what I want to do. I'm not ready to fire Mike Tomlin, and so I don't want to get in that entire discussion. But if you're Mike Tomlin, do you want this trade right now? And I think a part of it is I actually think he would go for it for a couple reasons. I mean, his son Dino Tomlin is playing at the University of Maryland. He is from Virginia. He would be compensated greatly. He's on he only got a 1-year extension. So he might be feeling that he's not getting the respect from his team. It would be a fresh start without getting fired and actually getting a whole heck of a lot of money. Is that, if you're Mike, would you, of course, you can't bring it up to him someone's going to bring it up to him in a press conference. And of course he is going to go ahead and he's going to poo-poo the whole thing and not want to talk about it. And he's going to probably do it quite angrily. But if he had a chance to go to Washington, based on all of those things I said, I think he would probably go for it. I'm not ready to make that deal. But what you said, though, a first-round pick, especially top 3 in the draft when you don't even have one, is kind of tempting based on the situation and based on they didn't really put that much trust in him when they only gave him that 1-year extension. So that's what I'm saying. So I'm wondering what he's thinking. Dante Harris, you're right. And I agree with this completely. Tomlin didn't fumble. He didn't. But I'm wondering if Mike wants to stay at this point. If you're asking me the question, I'm saying buy Tomlin. I'm saying you keep this guy. But that's my opinion. And I respect any opinion that says, get rid of him. So that's the thing. I'm wondering if he wants to stay at this point. But I really think he's a gamer. And I just bring that up because when I heard this today from Adam Schefter, that Snyder was looking at bringing in a guy like this, I know Dan Snyder being the kind of guy that wouldn't mind throwing a first-round pick at this guy.
Right.
So, that's the thing, and it's now we're looking at the. I'm looking at the board here, and a lot of people are ending the fact that I'm trying to get rid of the coach. And here's a great comment too. Dennis brings up he wants to stay. What coach walks away from his team? The thing I'm thinking about though is when you think about that, Gruden was ready to leave Oakland and go to Tampa Bay because it was a good situation, and that trade was made. The whole thing with Belichick and the Jets. Belichick was the Jets head man for 2 days back in 2000.
Yeah, that was
with
weird
that team,
thing.
and he kind of walked away from that. You know what? And Zen Masta says we're spoiled in Pittsburgh. Yeah, we are spoiled. And I'm just bringing that up is you're going to hear a lot of people that are going to want this if they can get a number 1 pick because they're still not buying the whole that Minka is better than door number 2. And they want that number 1 pick back. All I'm saying is this is out there. This is going to happen. I want to keep the guy. I want to keep Mike Tomlin as the coach. I want the offensive coordinator fired. I want Coach Randy out of the building. I want his headset turned in. And the reason I want that done is because with a better game plan from the offensive coordinator, this could be very well be at worst. This should be at worst a 3-2 team. This very easily could have been a 4-1 team.
And that's even without your best player, which tells you what kind of team that they have. That's why we bought all those players in the buy-sell segment. There's still enough there. There's still enough there. And
I did the buy-sell segment for a reason, to let you know what all you have here. I'm not really trading this roster right now. You just need to tweak the system, and if that system gets tweaked, that's where it's at. I don't think they're going to fire Randy Fichtner right now. I don't think they're going to do it, but that's just. I mean, everybody wants Tomlin gone. I'm not seeing that as what I want right now. I'm just going to tell you what I want. Randy Fichtner. I want Danny Smith Jr. to follow him out the door, because when you have a situation, you might as well not even kick off anymore. There's not a single chance. There's not a chance for them to do anything. Right. Now on special teams, you're getting a lot better play out of your punter, and you're getting a lot better play out of your kicker this year. But guess what? That's them.
Right. That's not the coach.
That's not the coaching. So, yeah, I mean, I don't expect him to fire his staff, but, it kind of gets to the point where you got to start making decisions to save yourself, though, too. And maybe it's time to make a change with one of those coaches. But with that being said, not many there's not many questions on the live chat. I really, Tony, I think we really stirred up the hornet's nest, and I knew I would. I knew I would with the whole buy, sell, and then the trade. But that's something that's out there, and that's something that you're going to hear people talking about. So let's just hit it head on. A number one would be nice, but remember, just like I said with the whole Minka Fitzpatrick deal, that's door number two. And I saw so many people in the 70s with Monty Hall on Let's Make a Deal wearing a chicken suit or a little Bo Peep costume, ended up with Rice-A-Roni, the San Francisco treat. So, and everybody is asking this too, and I'm going to bring up one more thing. Mr. T, Steelers fan, I would love it if Mr. T was actually Lawrence Taylor of A-Team fame, pity the fool. Who would be the Steelers' next coach if Tomlin did leave? Yeah, nobody who's knows. Who's on the couch right now? Right. Who would you bring in right now that would really be better? And you're not going to make a trade with Washington for something like that mid-season. The question is, what would you do? And what would you do in that situation? If you do fire your offensive coordinator thing, would it be something that you would disrupt what you have going right now? Maybe. That could be quite possible. But it's just food for thought. And at the end of the day, we don't make the decisions, but it's fun to talk about, isn't it?
Right.
So with that being said, remember, Behind the Steel Curtain is here for you in times of wins and times of losses on the football field. We're together. We are a family. And I got to do this. I got to stop saying goodbye because I just got $2 from Snowman to go ahead and read his question. And that's the wrong one. But that's funny because it's knock on wood if you hear me, if it's a Gruden joke. $2 from Snowman. Who is your coach if you trade Tomlin? Yeah, I really don't know at this point.
Long process.
Yeah, it's a guy you haven't even heard of. Right. It could be very well that guy. So we could talk about all of those things. I'm really not sure. I'm not ready to do that. But back to what I'm saying. We are a Behind the Steel Curtain family together. We're going to go ahead and get through these losses together. We're going to celebrate the wins together. And I just say that because I appreciate all of you here joining us every week. Hey, we don't have to agree, but we just have to be together. So I appreciate all of you. For Tony Defeo, my name is Bryan Anthony Davis. You can call me bad. Just don't call me late for supper. With that being said, you, my friends, have just been hungover, and we will see you next week. Good night.